Middlesex Community College. My name is Patrick Cook. I'm the Executive Director of Public Affairs here at the college, and I'm very proud, on behalf of the college and President Carol Cowan, to be hosting this debate in conjunction and partnership with the Lowell Sun newspaper. This is the first in a series of debates that's going to occur between now and November, and I'm glad you could all join us. Just a couple of housekeeping items that we wanted to go over before we get started. This program is being run, as I said, with the Lowell Sun newspaper and through the Office of Public Affairs here at the college, of which my colleague Mary Jo Griffin is going to be the moderator for today's debate. She's going to go over some of the ground rules for the candidates, but I wanted to acknowledge that in our audience today we have students from classes here at Middlesex Community College, as well as from Lowell High School, as well as from the Lowell Middlesex Academy Charter School. So thank you all to the students for participating as well. I would like to remind everybody, please put your cell phones on silent. Pages, if anybody still has one of those, to put them on silent as well. I know a number of you have asked questions about regarding Twitter, whether or not there'll be a Twitter live feed. There is, and I'm told that the hashtag that's being used is MAAG. So if you want to hashtag at that, we'll get sorted as well. The Lowell Sun News has their own Twitter handle as well as the college, so you can use those as well. The last housekeeping item from my end is I've been asked to do the coin toss to decide the order in which the questions will be answered for the first question. And in fairness, we're going to go with heads for Healy, tails for Tolman. We got the H and the T there, so we don't have to have anybody worry about calling it. And the first question, if I can catch that, is tails. So I'm going to turn the podium over now to my colleague Mary Jo Griffin from the Office of Public Affairs, and we thank you for joining us again.
Does that mean I go first?
Yes. Yes, that means you get the first question. Good afternoon. First of all, let's go over, let's introduce the candidates. We have Maura Healy, is a Massachusetts attorney and has worked in the Attorney General's office for the past 7 years. She's a graduate of Harvard University and Northeastern University Law School. Maura's family roots are in Newburyport in the North Shore, and she now lives in Charlestown with her partner. Warren Tolman is a Massachusetts attorney who has served in both the Massachusetts House of Representatives and the Senate. He previously worked at the law firm of Holland and Knight after leaving the legislature. He attended Amherst College and Boston College Law School. He grew up in Watertown and went to the Watertown Public Schools. He is married and has 3 children and lives in Watertown. I'm going to introduce our questioners for today. We have Sherry Dank, who is the Center for Leadership and Engagement Specials Program Coordinator here at Middlesex Community College. Jim Campanini is the editor of the Lowell Sun. Caroline Menezes is a student here at Middlesex Community College who will be graduating on Thursday. She has served as president of SUGA, which is the Student Union Government Association, for the past year. So just to go over how this debate is going to work, each candidate will be given 1 minute to respond to a question from the panel and a 30-second rebuttal. I have the option to ask a follow-up question if I so determine. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes at the end of the forum to make a closing statement. And please make sure you have turned off all your cell phone sounds. Please put them on silent. All right, so questions will be rotating. We're going to start. The first question is for Warren Tolman because he did win the coin toss. And the first question is coming from Sherry Dank.
Thank you. As we approach the 50th anniversaries of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, groups such as the American Civil Liberties Union Voting Rights Project have 3 guiding principles. All Americans should be able to vote, voting should be free and easy, and all votes should be counted equally. I've promoted voter registration on campus and personally became aware that students who registered properly were not, reported back to me they were not allowed to vote. As Attorney General, how can you assure everyone who registers properly will be able to vote and have their votes counted?
Mr. Tolman.
Thank you, Sherry. First of all, thank you to the Lowell Sun and to Middlesex for hosting us. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with everyone. The issue of voting rights is a very important one. It's fundamental to the long-term survival of our democracy. And it's one I take very seriously, and I've been an advocate for these rights while I was in the legislature and certainly since I've been out. In fact, one of the injustices I saw was when I traveled to Cuyahoga County in Cleveland on behalf of the John Kerry for President campaign in 2004 and saw long, long lines for people that wanted to wait well into the, well past the hours that the polls were closed. And it's basically a disenfranchising of individuals who try to exercise their right. It's more sophisticated these days than the old Jim Crow laws, but it's nonetheless very, very significant. I think that if Massachusetts should look at going down the road of passing mandatory IDs to vote and the like, I think it's an opportunity for the Attorney General to speak up and have a voice and use the bully pulpit that is the Attorney General's office to ensure that we don't go down this path, that everyone has the right, and to work closely with the Secretary of State's office as we go down and look and examine these issues. There's a number of different great organizations out there that I've worked with in the past that I've been involved with. I've hosted at my law firm, and I would look forward to continue to have a close partnership with them as the Attorney General to ensure that everyone's right in the democracy in the 21st century is everyone's vote is counted, and to ensure, frankly, to look at opportunities to work with other attorneys general nationally to ensure that those states are working to uphold the same laws that we do in Massachusetts.
Thanks for your question, Sherry, and thank you for all the work that you're doing on this important issue. And I also want to thank the Lowell Sun and Middlesex Community College, and of course, all of you for turning out today for this event. Look, it's really simple. I mean, voting and the right to vote is fundamental and critical to our democracy. And as Attorney General, I will do everything in my power to ensure that voting is easy, is accessible, and that no resident of the state is denied the opportunity to vote. You know, I was a civil rights lawyer. I was chief of the Civil Rights Division in the Attorney General's office. And from time to time, there would be proposals in the legislature on things like voter ID. We know that those are tools that are used to disenfranchise people and to cut and curtail access. And it's critically important that we resist and fight those efforts, and I'll certainly do that as Attorney General. I brought a lot of cases against discrimination in housing, employment, education, any number of areas, and this is an area that deserves no less advocacy or vigorous attention as AG, and I'm absolutely committed to that. And again, thank you for doing it, and thank you for encouraging young people to come out. It is so wonderful to see so many younger people engaged in the political process. You are the future, and I applaud you for that.
Thank you. Mr. Campanini?
I've looked at both of your websites. It has a lot of voluminous information, but one of the issues that is not on your websites concerns immigration issues. Is this because you feel that Massachusetts has solved all its immigration problems? And a second question to that is, what do you feel about the Secure Communities program, and is it good or bad for Massachusetts?
Ms. Healy, this is yours.
Thank you. Jim, this is a really important issue, and while immigration is viewed by many as a federal issue, I view it as a state issue as well. And as Attorney General, I will be a strong and vigorous advocate for needed immigration reform. I'm disgusted by the lack of movement out of D.C., and acting here as Attorney General and in collaboration with other state AGs, will look to move the ball on this. It's why I support in-state tuition for immigrants. It's why I support driver's licenses for immigrants. And again, as a civil rights lawyer, I've seen the effect of what happens when a breadwinner or a parent is taken away from the home due to these policies. I look at Secure Communities as a policy that does not work, and I'm not into supporting policies that aren't working. So I want to, as Attorney General, take a lead on needed immigration reform and make sure that every resident in the state, regardless of their status, understands that they have certain rights that are to be protected, and that I will protect them as Attorney General. I'll also make it comfortable for them to come forward to report instances of human trafficking, wage violation, sexual assault and abuse, domestic violence. It's really important that they understand that they have an Attorney General who is going to be there to give a voice to the vulnerable, and I'm committed to doing just that.
Thank you, Mr. Tolman.
Thanks. Thanks, Jim. This is an issue which I've spoken out many, many times over the past 10 years or so. I've had a role both on the local Fox affiliate, Channel 25. I've also spoken on pretty conservative talk radio, and I've never wavered in my commitment to assisting and working with and on behalf of the immigrant communities in Massachusetts. And that is something that I would seek to do as Attorney General, specifically with regard to the Secure Communities proposal which you have raised. I'm not a big fan of it, frankly. I think it can be utilized effectively to go after certain immigrants and targeted populations, and I think that law enforcement resources are better utilized in other ways to target more violent and significant crime. When I look at the contributions that immigrants make to our society, I think we ought to all acknowledge that, frankly, and I think we ought to encourage in-state tuition for immigrants in Massachusetts. I live in a community, Watertown. A quarter mile from my house is our local school, public school, where all of my children went, and 51 different languages are spoken there. Watertown is a very diverse community, similar to Lowell, and I embrace and welcome immigrants in my own community, and certainly in every action that I take, public and private. So I'm proud of my record here, and I look forward to being an Attorney General that welcomes everyone. The other thing I will say is with regard to the Attorney General's office specifically, we need to do a better job ensuring that people for whom English is a second language, have access to things like consumer protection when they call the Attorney General's office. I think we can do a better job with the 5 major languages that are not English, that are spoken by many of our immigrants, reaching out to and ensuring that when they call the Attorney General's office, someone is on the other end of the phone that can speak their language and talk to them about the specific issue about which they're calling.
The time is up, Mr. Tolan. Ms. Healy said that she is for in-state tuition and for driver's licenses. You said yes to tuition. What is your opinion of driver's license?
I'm the same. I support and have been for many years.
Okay, thank you. Did you have a rebuttal to that?
Well, it's not necessarily a rebuttal, but just a further comment. I can't help but reflect on the fact that we're sitting here today and you all are looking out on the dams and the canals behind us, and we think about the many immigrants that came to Lowell and built this community, built this country. I mean, like many of you, my grandparents came from Ireland, and I think the more we can do to celebrate and appreciate our history, what made this country great, what made Massachusetts great, is something that we should all reflect on. And certainly as AG, I will be an AG for everyone. Jim, I don't want you to ever feel like there's going to be a vacuum of leadership in the AG's office on this issue.
Okay, thank you. Caroline, this comes to Mr. Tolman.
On the topic of leadership, my question is, since I'm a student and I'm learning the importance of an effective leader, I want to know what your leadership experience is and your style that will assure me that you're the right person to lead the Attorney General's office.
Thanks, Caroline. Well, I think that's a fundamental difference in the way in who the next Attorney General will be. I've been a leader who stood up and taken on some very, very difficult battles during my tenure in public office specifically. I took on big tobacco long before it was popular, and when they were preying on young children, 90% of whom started smoking before they reached the age of 19. It was a battle that a lot of people told me I wouldn't win. Big tobacco hadn't been beaten for many years up on Beacon Hill, and we beat them. We beat them because I worked hard, because I was able to forge consensus and get lots of people who didn't necessarily agree on matters to agree to work with me on it. The American Cancer Society liked my work so much in this regard that they sent me around the country to work and teach and advocate with other legislators. I also was attacked on national radio. Rush Limbaugh called me an anti-smoking Nazi. I was proud of that. I was proud of standing up to big tobacco in that way. I also stood up as the only candidate in the history of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to run as a clean elections candidate on a statewide basis. I'm proud of that record. It was about political process and making it about our values and not about money. I also worked to pass the last campaign finance and ethics initiative that passed up on Beacon Hill. Again, probably the most difficult piece of legislation to pass up on Beacon Hill, but very important because it goes to the heart of Sherry's question, which is the fundamental underpinnings of our democracy, trying to limit the influence, the pernicious influence of big money and special interests on the political process. So I've taken on some of the most difficult battles, and I've won. And I want to do that. And I want to do that, for instance, one example is on the issue of on-campus sexual assault, which is crying out for leadership. The fact that a woman is more likely to be the victim of sexual assault if she goes to college today than if she doesn't is a disgrace. And I say that as the father of a daughter at BC going into her junior year next year. We've got to address this issue, and I want to use my leadership skills to call a summit for all the colleges and universities in Massachusetts to come here and to force them to implement best practices to make colleges safe for women and also for the smaller percentage of men that are victims of sexual assault. Implement best practices, get them smarter, and make the best colleges and universities the safest.
Thank you, Mr. Tolman. Ms. Healy, you have 30 seconds.
30 seconds or a minute?
It's 30 seconds.
No,
30.
she has a minute.
I'm sorry, a minute.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
All right. First of all, congratulations on your leadership. I was, a leader in my student class, a president a ways back, and I think leadership's really important. Leadership for me started at a young age. I'm the oldest of 5 kids, and for a time, my mom was raising us alone. And later through school, I ended up having leadership opportunities, captaining different sports teams, president of my class. So leadership has come naturally to me. And in the Attorney General's office, I was a leader. I was chief of the Civil Rights Division. I was chief of the Public Protection Bureau. I was chief of the Business and Labor Bureau. I had responsibility for half of that office. 250 lawyers and staff reported to me. So I understand directly leadership, and most directly, most relevant, leadership in the Attorney General's office. I too have led not just teams and divisions and bureaus, but on issues. Many years ago, I led by taking on a popular president, President Obama, and the Justice Department over the Defense of Marriage Act. That was a case that many told me not to bring, and it took some convincing even within the office. But that was an opportunity for leadership. We took on DOMA, and we won. I led taking on Wall Street banks and predatory lenders. I led setting up the first of its kind anti-foreclosure program that's operating right here in Lowell. And I led by reaching out to Apple and making sure that its technology for students was going to be accessible. My qualities as a leader: I'm a team builder, I'm a team promoter, I'm into empowering people, and I'm into a mentality that says don't ever be afraid to stick your neck out and do the right thing.
Thank you. Next question is for Sherry. And it goes to Ms. Healy.
Thank you. Both of your campaign websites tout your support for women's right to make their own private health decisions. As Attorney General, will you use the power of the office to advocate for women to be protected against legislation that would impose waiting periods for mandatory counseling? And would you stand against corporations that impose religious views on employees by refusing to cover birth control and other vital services?
Absolutely, Sherry. I'm pleased that the Planned Parenthood recently endorsed me, as well as the Women's Campaign Fund and the Feminist Majority, in part because of my long track record on those very issues. When I was Civil Rights Chief in that office, I led the office's work around reproductive rights. The first piece of legislation I worked on implementing was the buffer zone law, protecting access to reproductive health care for women. I trained police on it, I trained district attorneys on it. On those issues of legislation, we'd actually seen those come up before, and I prepared testimony in the Attorney General's office to oppose mandatory counseling, mandatory waiting periods, and the like. The last thing I approved before I resigned the office to run was an amicus brief that we filed in the Hobby Lobby case. That's the case that's coming out soon out of the Supreme Court on the issue of whether an employer can use his religious beliefs to discriminate by not providing needed insurance coverage for contraception. So I'm proud of my record on those issues. No one will be more committed to ensuring that women have an advocate as Attorney General in ensuring access to needed reproductive health care and sexual health care. Very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tolman?
Yes, Sherry. The short answer is absolutely. In 8 years in the legislature, I differed with the National Organization for Women's position on one occasion, exactly one occasion, and that was to allow for single-sex health clubs in Massachusetts, which some might suggest that I actually took the more feminist position to allow for women to exercise in single-sex clubs. So on both of those fronts, and specifically, I was one of the original sponsors of the buffer zone law in the wake of the horrific shooting in Brookline by a gentleman by the name of John Salvi. I take a backseat to no one on these issues, and that's why I talked so aggressively about the issue of on-campus sexual assault. I guess, how does a man become a feminist? I think the answer is to have a couple daughters, which I do have, and to look into, and frankly, I would go even further with respect to women's issues. And you know, the notion that my two daughters are going to earn on average 77 cents, 80 cents on the dollar that my son will earn didn't make sense 50 years ago, and it certainly doesn't make any sense now. So on whether it be religious entities attempting to impose their views or mandatory counseling and the like, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to allow it, and I'm going to look for ways and be an aggressive advocate on behalf of a women's right.
Thank you. Do you have about 30 seconds?
Yes, I'm glad you raised this issue because our next AG is going to have to make some important decisions in the wake of these two decisions coming out of the Supreme Court. And having been the person who helped not just draft the updated buffer zone law, we did a new law in 2007, but actually implement that, and having gone down to the Supreme Court myself to listen to arguments this past January on that case, I have a very clear idea of what it is we will need to do here in Massachusetts, both with respect to the buffer zone and with respect to insurance coverage. And you know, these are really important issues. They're not just women's issues. These are pocketbook issues. These are family issues. Women increasingly control households. They're majority breadwinners. And we need to start to, and others need to start to understand laws and policy. And again, you'll get no greater advocate than me on these issues.
Thank you. Mr. Campanini, the question is to Mr. Tolman.
The Attorney General's office has great authority to reject or approve citizens' petitions ballot questions that head for statewide voters. As we know now, the Supreme Judicial Court will decide whether the casino repeal effort makes it on the ballot. My question, though, is, did the present Attorney General overstep her bounds by rejecting that question that was signed by 70,000 registered voters in this state? And if it does make it to the ballot, where would you vote against repeal or for repeal?
Excuse me. Well, first of all, I don't think the Attorney General overstepped her bounds. Certainly, she has the discretion to decide to let a question go forward on a basis of a number of specific components that are set out in the Constitution that delineate when ballot questions can go forward. The question is whether she made the right decision or not. We're going to hear from the SJC in the next few weeks. If I were the Attorney General, my own preference is to allow for, in close calls, to allow for the people to speak out and let the people have a voice. Frankly, I think that's one of the best components of the casino statute that the legislature passed, is to enable individual communities to decide when they want, whether they want a casino or a gaming entity, slot machines and the like, in their community. I like that provision. So I was one of the, I signed the petition to allow the question to go on the ballot. But I will say I'm going to vote against it if it is on the ballot because I believe that there are communities like Springfield that have exercised their right to have a casino and for which the infusion of $800 million in economic development and the thousands of jobs that go with it are very, very significant for a community like Springfield. Community was, as you know, Jim, on the brink of bankruptcy in 2003. They were in state receivership from 2003 to 2009, and frankly, they are still not out of the woods yet. They're doing better, but their tax revenue is relatively flat. I cannot, and I don't think, given that Mohegan Sun and Foxwoods are about an hour down the road from Springfield, and 40% of their revenue comes from Massachusetts residents, I don't think we can pretend that casinos are not having an impact on Massachusetts. They already are. The question is, are we going to benefit from them in any fashion? And in Springfield's case, they have decided that they want it, and I would yield to communities that have decided to go forward.
Ms. Healy?
Jim, I think your question points up what has become a fundamental difference in this race. I actually disagree with the current Attorney General. I believe this is an issue that should get to the ballot and the people should vote. My personal vote, if it gets to the ballot, will be to repeal the casino law. I oppose casinos because I've been a consumer advocate. I've seen the predatory lending, unfair debt collection, upticks in personal bankruptcies and foreclosures, not to mention the addiction issues and the crime issues. More importantly and more relevant to today, Mohegan Foxwoods just laid off people just last week, and revenues from casinos are down 12% out of Connecticut. So I don't think it's a job solution either. But fundamentally, Warren and I differ on this, and in some sense, it may be born out of experience. I come out of this as public protection chief and a consumer advocate. Warren developed a patent and is an investor in an online gambling company that targets young people. So we just have different perspectives. If there is gaming in this state, though, as Attorney General, I will be a strong and independent regulator of that industry, that's for sure.
Mr. Tolman, do you have anything you'd like to respond?
I do on a couple fronts. First off, with respect to the online gaming, I've divested any interest, and it was a company that was targeted and focused exclusively on working with state lotteries, and the state lottery in Massachusetts gives back over $1 billion to cities and towns. So that's the first thing. Secondly, with regard to the gaming issue generally, the issue will have been decided by the time either one of us is the next Attorney General, if it is one of us, and I certainly intend to support Maura if she wins in September. And so the real focus ought to be on what we're going to do to make sure, if casino is the law of the land and gambling is allowed in Massachusetts, who's going to go after these casino companies and ensure that they abide by every letter of the host and surrounding communities agreements, adhere to the strictest enforcement of Chapter 93A in the consumer protection laws. I take a backseat to no one in terms of how I would approach and go after big entities like I did with Big Tobacco, and go after the gambling entities to ensure that they don't engage in the predatory marketing and advertising in Massachusetts. I will be the most aggressive Attorney General in the United States to go after these entities if gambling is permitted in Massachusetts.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just one follow-up on that?
Quickly.
With respect to divestiture, I mean, when we were going through caucuses, Warren, in February, that is when you got the patent from the U.S. Patent Office. And in terms of divestiture, that did not happen until this was exposed by the Boston Globe just a few weeks ago. So, in terms of skepticism, I think the candidate with a healthy skepticism, not direct involvement with the industry, is the one best suited to be the leader in protecting the public interest should we see gaming in the state.
It's amazing that you keep bringing this up. I didn't divest in something which was worthless. I haven't been involved in the company for many, many months. So you want to talk about something that is absolutely irrelevant, because I think we really ought to be thinking and talking about issues that are going to affect the people in Massachusetts. I'm surprised you keep going down this path, Maura.
Well, I don't think it was worthless. Your own prospectus put your projected revenues at 5 years at $127 million through this technology. So I think it does speak to judgment. I think it speaks to perspective, and I think it speaks to the understanding that one will bring to the office, where the important charge, in part, is protecting consumers in the public interest.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next question. Caroline?
If found guilty, do you support the death penalty for Dzhokhar Tsarnaev?
That's to you, Ms. Healy.
I oppose the death penalty under all circumstances. And there are any number of reasons for that, and any number of studies that have been done with regard to mistakes in the process, the economic cost of these capital cases. But I've been clear, my personal position is I oppose the death penalty under any circumstance. That said, help but be moved and feel absolutely horrible about the terrible atrocity and what happened to families in this state and visiting this state on that terrible day. And I've been a prosecutor for a time. I understand something about crime and its impact and devastation on victims and their families. So while that is my position on the death penalty, it is not to be taken as one that doesn't recognize how important it is to be there for victims. And certainly as Attorney General, I will do everything to protect their safety and their well-being and protect families and give them resources and strength in the aftermath of incidents.
Mr. Tolman?
Sure. So, Caroline, I've actually led the fight against the death penalty and the imposition thereof in Massachusetts when I was in the Massachusetts State Senate. I believe that at the end of the day, government must be better than what society is in its worst moments. It's not a deterrent. It's racially biased, as studies have shown. It's actually more costly. And so, no, I've been, my entire public career, I've been outspoken against the death penalty and will continue to remain so. I also live in Watertown, where this terrorist came after he bombed the marathon victims and took Sean Collier's life. And I was in the perimeter area where I had the SWAT team come through my house. My phone rang in the middle of the night that night, and with my next door neighbor crying hysterically about, did you hear that? It sounded like bombs and guns. I watched as the police were in my backyard at the crack of light that morning. I had the police choppers overhead, and my whole neighborhood, my whole town was uprooted. And I know little kids that to this day it still has an impact on sort of a PTSD as a result of what those terrorists did. And frankly, the first two officers on the scene on that night are good friends of mine. So I know the havoc that these people could and did instill personally, but I don't believe that the death penalty is the response to it. I don't want to make a martyr out of this terrorist. I've still, by the way, never said his name. I don't intend to do so. I think that at the end of the day, life without the possibility of parole is a suitable punishment for him.
Thank you. Sherry, the next question is to Mr. Tolman.
The United States has the highest rate of incarceration in the world. Our prisons and jails have more than 2.3 million people in prison. Many men and women in Massachusetts are in prison when what they really need is mental health treatment. As Attorney General, will you increase access to substance abuse and mental health treatment for those who are imprisoned?
Absolutely, Sherry, and I will advocate for this. And I've driven a public policy agenda up on Beacon Hill. I've made some significant legislative changes as a legislator and advocated for these types of things. In fact, when I look at the criminal justice system, I see a system that is broken. I see a system where approximately 82% of the prisoners in the Massachusetts jails have a mental health or a substance abuse issue. 97% of them are getting out. We don't deal with the problems in jail when they're there by and large because the jails are at overcapacity. 133% of capacity is where the jails are in Massachusetts. So we're not doing a good job treating, and we're not doing a good job preparing them to get out of jail. I'm for repealing mandatory minimums for nonviolent drug offenders. I think that we need to look at the whole system of criminal justice, from the way we target crimes, the way we offer bail opportunities for individuals, and the way we treat individuals when they're in jail and also when they get out, including further revisions to Corey. And in addition, I look at Framingham, which is our only prison for women in Massachusetts, and say we have a real problem there as well, because if you're a woman who gets arrested for a minor issue in Lowell today and gets a bail set at $150 and you can't afford that, you're going to Framingham, no matter where that crime takes place or alleged crime takes place in Massachusetts, and you're going to be in there with hardened criminals. And that's not the way we should be incarcerating and dealing with women who are engaged in relatively minor crimes. So we've got a lot of reforms that are needed in the criminal justice system. The issue of mental health and substance abuse has been one that I've talked about from the day I got in this campaign. It is a singular focus of mine. I went to the Alliance on Mental Illness rally on 2 Saturdays ago. It was a very uplifting experience for me. I read in today's Globe that 74% of our patients in Massachusetts don't have a continuing care plan when they leave. 74% of patients nationally have a continuing care plan to deal with their mental health issues. In Massachusetts, it's 41%. That's a disgrace. We've got to do better. We've got to hold hospitals and healthcare providers accountable for doing a better job treating mental health and substance abuse in Massachusetts, and it directly relates to the criminal justice issues that are out there.
Ms. Healy?
Well, Sherry, there's an urgent need for criminal justice reform in our state, and last week I put out a plan that's quite comprehensive on this issue, and I encourage anyone to look at it. It's on the website. And as a result, I was endorsed by Sheriff Chris Donlan, who's been leading the way on a lot of the drug treatment programs out in Western Mass. Because if you talk to a lot of sheriffs, what they will tell you is that their jails are increasingly detox centers for those struggling with drug and alcohol addiction and those who are suffering from mental illness, when what they need is a bed. They need a place to go, and it's not jail. That's not working. So part of my plan, in addition to calling for an end of mandatory minimums for nonviolent drug offenses, is also to do things that really focus on shifting resources and investment away from further construction of jails and facilities to construction of and supporting programs around addiction and mental health services. As Attorney General, I know that I can use settlement funds in the office to help fulfill some of that need that's out there, and can use oversight of hospitals and insurance companies to make sure that we're providing the beds and the services and the treatments to those who need them. But this will go a long way, I believe, towards needed criminal justice reform. Here in Middlesex County, in our district courts, and I saw firsthand the revolving door of folks coming into and out of the courtroom because of their mental health issues and because of drug addiction and alcohol addiction that went untreated for far too long. We need to get a handle on it. I'm prepared to lead on it as Attorney General. I think I'm uniquely situated to do just that, and I look forward to that opportunity.
Mr. Tolman, do you?
Yeah, Sherry, one of the issues that I think is important here is that mental health parity is the law of the land. We're supposed to be treating someone that has a mental health issue the same as someone who has a heart attack or heart issue. It's not, in fact, being enforced appropriately. We need to do a better job there. I was in Taunton a few weeks ago, and we're talking to the Chief of Police, Chief Walsh, and the mayor down there, Tom Boy, who's endorsed me. Taunton is the epicenter of the substance abuse issue in Massachusetts. They've had over 130 drug overdoses so far this year. The chief pointed to a brown apartment building, said, we've been there twice in the last 5 days, Warren. A 24-year-old woman has overdosed twice. That was on a Tuesday. And each day, both times, when they got to the hospital, the mother of the woman asked for a bed and asked her daughter to be admitted and treated for her underlying substance abuse issues. They didn't have a bed. Unfortunately, I got an email on Thursday that the woman had had her third and final overdose. We failed that woman. We failed her because of her underlying mental health and substance abuse issue. That cannot go on any longer. When I'm Attorney General, I will do everything I can to confront this issue, take it on, and work on it as a leader, as a fighter, as your next Attorney General.
Mr. Tolan, Ms. Healy mentioned that she is in favor of the mandatory minimums for non-drug. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I think I said that, but that was, in fact, in my criminal justice plan, which is also on my website, warrentolman.com, that's the first item that I list, is repeal of mandatory minimums for non-violent drug offenders.
All right, I think it's Mr. Campanini, and it's to, I lost track, I think it's to Ms. Healy.
What is the Achilles heel of the Attorney General's office right now? And I don't mean about the person who occupies that office, but I mean where can the biggest improvements be made, and what departments? I look at consumer protection, corporate malfeasance, and other departments. So where, if you were elected, would you focus on improving that office?
Well, you know, I think that one of the things that you know, I should say at the outset is I think that Attorney General Coakley has been a terrific Attorney General and has really led the nation particularly on consumer issues, when you think about the work that the office has done, taking on banks and predatory lenders, really setting the mark there. But I have given that some thought, Jim, and last week I came out with a proposal to create for the first time in that office a Child and Youth Protection Division. It has been my observation over the last several weeks and months that we are not doing a good enough job as a state, making sure that children and families get the care and services that they need, and that there is proper sort of monitoring and accountability in that system. So I actually have a proposal, Jim. I was out last week with Lisa Wong in Fitchburg, the terrific mayor out there who's supporting me and who's been dealing with some of these DCF cases in her community. And it calls for bringing together under one house, one division, all of the services for kids, whether it's child pornography, child trafficking, child labor issues, cyberbullying, communications, and more proactive leadership with some of our state agencies like DCF that are responsible for administering care and services to young people and families. So that's an idea. That's something I'm really anxious to roll my sleeves up on, Jim, and I think it'll make a real difference.
Mr. Tolman?
I would first target consumer protection. When the woman in Lowell pays a painter $5,000 and never sees him again, I don't think enough people in Massachusetts know that they have someone to whom they can turn in the Consumer Protection Division in Massachusetts. The number of consumer complaints has declined precipitously over the past 10 years. I don't think that's because there aren't any issues or unscrupulous people out there. I think it's because we're not doing a good enough job reaching out to people and letting them know that their Attorney General is there to deal with consumer protection issues. I worked in this area when I was in college as a complaint mediator for 2 summers. It was where my interest in the law was kindled, and I see it as a real way in which we can have a positive impact serving the people of Massachusetts. Second area is on the gun regulations that are in that office. They haven't been updated for 10 years. Gun technology has advanced very significantly, yet nothing's been done to update the gun regs. The third issue that I would take on is right now within the Civil Rights Division, we have the disabled, all issues affecting the disabled in Massachusetts are directed. I would take that disability section out and make it its own division, because 12% of the people in Massachusetts have a disability according to the University of Cornell study, and I would take that out and make that a standalone division that focuses specifically on the rights of the disabled, because I think they need the protection on a whole range of issues that they have to deal with on a regular basis.
Thank you. 30 seconds.
Sure, just another thought, particularly as I sit here today and look out on so many wonderful students. Something that I learned doing a lot of predatory lending work and anti-foreclosure work with respect to mortgages is that there are new forms of predatory practice. And one form is predatory student lending. So I've come forward with a really aggressive plan, Jim, to get after these predatory for-profit colleges that advertise to you to sign up, promising certificates of value, and then at the end of the day, you're left with all sorts of debt that you can't get rid of as a student. So I am a big proponent of taking on for-profit colleges and schools. I, too, have a strong plan to deal with gun violence. I know it's an issue here in Lowell and elsewhere throughout the state. That, too, is on the website. But I grew up on the New Hampshire border. A lot of this is about giving tools to law enforcement to combat gun trafficking, to close certain loopholes that exist around the sharing of information between and among local, state, and federal authorities and the like. So I have an aggressive plan on that. And I have an aggressive plan on getting at opioids and prescription drugs. I want pharmacists and dispensers and prescribers to have real-time information of who is getting prescriptions when, so that we can identify those who are abusing or selling drugs. So many of our transactions now, criminal scenarios, are taking place outside the parking lot of CVS. And so my plan talks about harnessing technology to better get at and combat the abuse of prescription drugs and the traffic.
Would you like to rebut?
Yeah, with respect to the opioid addiction crisis, we've got a lot of work to do, and what I want to specifically do is to go after the small number of doctors. 20% of the doctors are prescribing 80% of the pills. Make sure that they know that they're on notice to do the appropriate thing and to not over-prescribe. Secondly, I would deal with the issue of Big Pharma, where they produce these drugs in non-tamper-resistant form. I would push them to provide tamper-resistant drugs. And thirdly, I would go after to the young students, both in college as well as in high school, in middle school, to teach them about the dangers of opiate addiction. It is a serious problem in all our communities. I had a friend from high school who fell at work, had back surgery, got addicted to opiates, lost his job, lost his home, lost his wife and any access to his kids as his whole life spiraled out of control. So this is a real scourge. It's an epidemic. It's a crisis, as the governor refers to, and we need to do a better job with it.
Thank you. Caroline, you have a question for Mr. Tolman.
Last November, Middlesex Community College went smoke-free. As president of the student government here at the school, I helped implement that. Do you think there should be more regulation of the flavored tobacco being produced and marketed to young people?
Well, first of all, Caroline, congratulations on your leadership and also for fighting that battle. I'm sure not everyone agreed with you, as they didn't agree with me when I led the fight to make the State House smoke-free. I also was president of my college class and was proud of my leadership, and I know that it's sometimes can be difficult to be a student leader and push some of these issues. So I commend you for that. Yes, absolutely. The issue of the flavored tobacco and the e-cigarette, if you will, and the way some of the tobacco companies and the manufacturers of these devices are now targeting and preying on making their drugs attractive to kids is the next frontier in this battle. And we're looking and waiting for the feds to take action here. But while we are, I believe it's a real opportunity for the attorney generals to stand forward. And when they start marketing licorice-flavored e-cigarettes, they're not targeting the 30-year smoker. They're targeting young children to try to get them addicted to nicotine earlier on in their career. And I believe that the next attorney general, and by the way, this is not a small business anymore. This is a business that now the gross annual revenues are going into the billions of dollars. So if we think, well, it's not that prevalent, it's not that big a deal, it is a huge deal. And this is a perfect instance where the Attorney General, acting under 93A, can at least push forward. There may be obviously some federal preemption issues here. We can certainly use the bully pulpit that is the Attorney General's office to advocate for some significant restrictions on this from the FTC.
Ms. Healy?
Yeah, really important issue. I'm reminded of something that happened when I was in the Attorney General's office. Remember years ago there was that drink, Four Loko, the alcohol drink, right? Mm-hmm. And they marketed it and they targeted it to young people. And really, really dangerous alcoholic drink caused all sorts of issues. And when I was in the Attorney General's office, we went after them. And we banded together with other state AGs to stop that practice. And I think it's exactly what we need to do here. In fact, that process has already started. I know that our current Attorney General has already made statements and taken action on this smoke-free devices. And really important. I mean, anything and everything that we can do to protect young people and to keep them from engaging in behavior that is addictive, that is harmful, is certainly something that's top of my agenda as Attorney General, and we do have the tools to do it. So I'll continue to support what the current AG has already started on that front.
Thank you. Sherry, your question for Ms. Healy.
Massachusetts has a large number of responsible gun owners who abide by some of the strictest laws in the country. There are groups in law enforcement that support required fingerprint recognition technology for all new firearms sold in the Commonwealth, and a suitability test for gun ownership and licensing, which they see as a way to combat gun violence. What is the responsibility of the Attorney General to bring people together with very different views on this issue?
Well, I think the Attorney General has a terrific opportunity to lead on this issue, and I look forward to doing just that. I put forward this extensive gun plan a few weeks ago and received the support of the leading criminologist, Jack McDevitt, who has been advising our state legislature on gun reform laws, and we're going to see something out of the legislature soon. But here's my view. It's multifaceted. I certainly support the use of any technology that's going to make guns safer, right? But I also know that we need to do a heck of a lot more than that. And that includes, I think, as an initial matter, making sure that Massachusetts sign up for the national database. Right now, we don't report. We're one of just 12 states, if you can believe it, that doesn't report to the national database. And I think that that's something that we can do tomorrow, and that would be helpful. I also think that we need to commit to tracing all the guns here in Massachusetts. And, you know, again, we're real close to the New Hampshire border where we know how easy it is for guns to come and go. Really important, and I'm committed to working with others in law enforcement, particularly in neighboring states like New Hampshire, to cut down on the trafficking of guns and the sale of guns to those people in New Hampshire who are crossing the border who shouldn't be buying guns. You know, we need to do a better job of making sure that our systems talk to one another, that background checks are comprehensive, and that information is shared. We don't want guns ending up in the hands of people who are a danger to themselves or to others. So those are just some ideas in addition to working. Really important to me is working with schools. You know, working with schools and young people early on to identify those with behavioral health issues that may pose a danger to themselves or to others. Working with schools on school safety issues. Wasn't long ago, was it in December, that shooting took place outside the Lincoln School in the middle of the afternoon. So we need to protect our children in our communities, and certainly, you know, in addition to the law enforcement work around combating trafficking, closing some of the loopholes, and making sure that we have technology. I want to be out there educating people as well. But you know, look, I took on the federal government and President Obama over the Defense of Marriage Act, and I took on big banks. I'm not afraid to take on the NRA or anybody else.
Mr. Tolman?
Sure. So we're all for a comprehensive solution to the gun issues and the violence that's out there. I certainly am. I didn't get many Fs in my life, but I did get an F from the local chapter of the NRA, the Gun Owners Action League, when I was in the legislature. And I don't shy away from standing up for the opportunity to make our communities safer. My dad had a gun, however, and I'm not trying to take away anyone's gun. But this issue, the embracing of smart gun technology, which Maura says she supports, is a fundamental difference between how the two of us would approach this office. And specifically, the gun regs in Massachusetts have not been updated in over 10 years. The smart gun technology that is out there could be, the implementation of which could be forced on the sale of all new guns sold in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts by the Attorney General of Massachusetts. It hasn't been done. The person who promulgated the original regulations, Scott Harshbarger, former Attorney General, agrees with me that it can be done. I believe it should be done, and when I'm Attorney General, it will be done, because every hour of every day, somewhere in America, a young child is rushed to the hospital as a result of a gun accident in the home. That does not, by the way, include the 50 to 60 suicides a week that could be, some of which could be prevented by embracing the smart gun technology. The smart gun technology is the fingerprint recognized technology. It's your gun, you grab it, it recognizes your fingerprint. You can have 5 people on it if you want, or it can be just you. You can also have a wristband. Today's Washington Post actually talks about the importance of smart gun technology. Fundamental difference. I took on big tobacco. I'm ready to take on the NRA. I beat big tobacco. I will beat the NRA with regard to this issue, making our guns safer for all of us.
Thank you. Jim, did you want to rebut?
Yeah, just on
Quickly.
the comment about smart gun technology, Warren's right. I do support smart gun technology. My view, and having had direct experience in this in the Attorney General's office, is that, you know, it's safer to do it by legislation than by regulation. It makes it less vulnerable to legal challenge in court. But, you know, as Attorney General and as a courtroom litigator, I'll be prepared to make that case at the right time. I just think that on guns, we need to have a far more robust solution. I mean, what happens to guns? We can talk as a forward-going matter when it comes to the manufacture of guns, but I know that communities here in the state are dealing with guns right now in our community that are wreaking havoc on families and communities, and so
Okay.
my energy is going to focus on that as well.
Mr. Tolman?
Well, legislation is subject to challenges, legal challenges as well, and sometimes you have to lead, and the Attorney General can do this. I will do it, unequivocally. I will do it. I will not wait for the legislature to act. I've been in the legislature. Sometimes they move real quickly, sometimes they don't, and I'm not willing to wait because, again, every hour of every day. Sometimes we need to move more quickly, post haste. I'm all for a comprehensive solution to this issue. It is a real problem. And the legislature, I hope, will deal with it very quickly. But in the meantime, we can't wait. It's a scourge on our urban communities and in many of our rural communities. Many lives can be saved. There was a woman who proposed smart gun technology in California a few weeks ago. It was in the New York Times. She got death threats. We've got to go forward on this because the NRA doesn't want this technology to go forward because they see a simple step in this direction as an infringement on one's Second Amendment rights. I say no. This is like seat belts for guns. It's about airbags, airbags to cars as this is to guns. Let's make it safer.
Okay. We have time for one more question, and Jim, it'll be from you to Mr. Tolman.
Mr. Tolman, well, this question comes from an interview you had with the Berkshire Eagle. It involves a much larger issue, and I'm sure Ms. Healy has some viewpoints on it. You said that if elected, you would update the wiretapping law that is too restrictive on police and, I quote, severely antiquated to reflect modern society. There are severe restrictions. Now, I think I know where you were getting at. You can elaborate. But my question is, yes, we need safe communities, and we have to give police the tools to do that. But we also need privacy rights. So my question is, how do you toe the line? The next Attorney General is going to be battling with these issues, and probably even more severe with the, with federal wiretapping. That it seems like an infringement on local citizens. So how are you going to deal with this, and what do you exactly mean by wiretapping law that is too restrictive on police?
I bet some editor edited out the second part of my comment. Specifically what I meant, first of all, a little background. The wiretap law in Massachusetts hasn't been updated since 1968, okay? So we need to update it and to recognize that things have changed. Specifically, the preamble of the wiretap law excuse me, deals with the issue of organized crime, and for which the wiretap law can currently be utilized only for organized crime. Very limiting factor. There's Justice Gantz actually has a great decision on this that basically limits the wiretap law for organized crime. What I want to do is to enlarge it, specifically enlarge it, but very narrowly enlarge it for the use of guns in violent crimes. Okay, that would be the extent to which I would enlarge it. I was down in New Bedford talking to Sam Sutter, who's the DA down there, and he told me about a couple individuals that are walking around his streets that they cannot arrest because the wiretap law hasn't been updated. They don't have the means to do it. We don't have as much organized crime today. The way it works now is you have 4 or 5 guys involved in a hit on somebody, and they cover their tracks with emails and texts back and forth to each other. I want to be able to go after these individuals, not law-abiding citizens. I want to make sure that law-abiding citizens don't have to worry. So that's why the enlargement of it is very narrow. It's for violent crimes involving guns. So it recognizes that that's where society is today. Organized crime and the mafia and the like, it's just not as big of a prevalent factor in crimes, and particularly not in violent crimes as it was in the 60s when this law was written. So I appreciate the opportunity to edify people about what I was referring to then.
Thank you. Ms. Healy?
Sure. So when you're Attorney General, you're the Chief Legal Officer and you're the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of the state. That means you're responsible for protecting public safety, but protecting people's constitutional rights. And the right to privacy is laid out in the United States Constitution and in the Massachusetts Constitution. And I come to this as the only candidate in the race who's been both a prosecutor and a civil rights attorney. So I'm very attentive to the idea and the responsibility of upholding the law and protecting people's rights. See, Jim, I've never viewed these things as mutually exclusive. You can protect people's safety, but not invade their privacy. There are times we've seen in the past where some in law enforcement have crossed that line. As Attorney General, I will be there to make sure that does not happen on my watch, and that we're acting in ways that protect people's privacy, protect their interests, but also we have to give law enforcement the tools that they need to do their work. This wiretap issue, I mean, as Warren probably knows, the wiretap bill has been long debated and discussed over the years in the legislature. There was some controversy about the kinds of crimes that might be covered. I too fully support the need to update the laws so that police can use and have access to cell phones and other new forms of technology that didn't exist in 1968. That's really important. I also think it's important that law enforcement have the tools not just to get after gun traffickers, but human traffickers. There are people who traffic in people in this state. So I'll certainly support providing the necessary resources to law enforcement, police and investigators, district attorneys to do the work that they need. But make no mistake about it, people's privacy will be protected.
Okay, we've come to the end of our questions. You will each be able to have 2 minutes to give a closing statement. And since Warren, you got the first question, why don't we let Ms. Healy close first? You have 2 minutes.
Great. Thank you again, all of you, for coming out today, and thank you to the Lowell Sun and to Middlesex Community College for making this event available. I think that in the course of today you've heard Warren and I agree on different issues, sometimes disagree on some issues. But I think what's going to be important for voters in this election is determining the credibility to deliver on these priorities. And I come to this having left the Attorney General's office, where I was last in charge of about half of the attorneys and staff in that office. And years ago, I made a decision to leave private practice in a Boston law firm, take a 70% pay cut to join the Attorney General's office. And it was the best decision I ever made. And it was there that I understood that as discouraged as people may be about the role of government in society, your Attorney General's office is the place where we can make possible opportunities for people, where we can use the law and the tools to advance issues of justice and equality and fairness. And that's what I've had the privilege of doing the last 7 years, taking on the Defense of Marriage Act and being the first state in the country to defeat that discriminatory law, a huge movement for civil rights. We just celebrated the Goodrich decision just days ago. Being the first to file a civil rights case against a subprime predatory lender and to hold banks accountable for unlawful foreclosures. Taking on Apple and making sure that they made their products accessible to young people and to students. These are the kinds of fights I got to lead and the issues I got to take up. And I see firsthand and understand firsthand all the tools that the Attorney General has in her toolbox to make a difference in people's lives. A long time ago, I was a basketball player and a point guard. I'm only 5'4", so when I stand up, you'll see that I could only have been a point guard. But point guards are about building teams and driving strategy and leading people down the court. Those same skills I took with me to the courtroom, and I've had the privilege of litigating and working on behalf of the people of this state the last very many years. People often talk about the Attorney General's office as the people's law firm. And I say, I'm here today because I want to be the people's point guard. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
I encourage you all to look at our website, maurahealy.com. I ask for your support, and if anyone's interested in getting involved in the campaign, please see my campaign staff who's here today. Thank you again for the opportunity.
Mr. Tolman.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for participating and for coming. It's great to be in Lowell. Lowell is a community that has really done well thanks to some inspired leadership. One of my political heroes was Paul Tsongas. I was a presidential delegate for him when he ran for president, and proud of my association with him, and I'm proud of the work that he did on behalf of the city of Lowell. But I'm also proud of organizations like UTEC for which I did some pro bono legal work at my law firm, and the great things they're doing on the streets of Lowell on an everyday basis. I'm also proud of the support of former Senator Steve Pangiotakis in this race, and also one of your former mayors, City Councilor Bill Martin. They are supporting me, along with all 4 living former Attorney Generals in Massachusetts. There's only 4 of them, and they all agree that Warren Tolman should be your next Attorney General. Because this race isn't about who was the best former Assistant Attorney General or anything else. It's about leadership. It's about someone who can take the Massachusetts Attorney General's office and lead it in a positive, affirmative direction on behalf of all the citizens of the Commonwealth, so that everyone knows that they have a fighter, irrespective of their race, their religion, their sex, their sexual orientation. I want people to know that in Warren Tolman as the next Attorney General, people will have an advocate. People will have someone in their corner, so that when they are discriminated against, or when they have a consumer complaint, or they need an advocate, they will have someone looking out zealously for their interests. Similarly, on the environmental front, about which we haven't talked today, I'm proud that I'm the only candidate in this race to have been endorsed by an environmental organization, the Environmental League of Massachusetts. Again, they chose me because of my leadership on, I think, one of the cutting-edge issues that we have to address, the issue of climate change, and the work we have to do to making sure that the next generation has an environment that is safer and better for everybody. Those are the types of issues about which I want to work on as your next Attorney General, which I want to fight with and on behalf of the people of the Commonwealth. My website is warrentolman.com. I respectfully ask for your support and would love to get people involved in my campaign, and I appreciate the opportunity to be heard today. Thank you.
All right, and that wraps up our first debate in the Middlesex Community College Lowell Sun debate series. I want to thank Lowell High School for coming today. I want to thank the Middlesex Community College Charter School, the faculty and staff from Middlesex who have joined us, as well as the community members. Let's give a round of applause for Sherry Dank and Jim Campanini and Caroline Menendez. And again, Mr. Warren Tolman and Ms. Mara Healy. Thank you so much for your time today.